welcome. This is Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer. I'm Dr. Greer, and I'd like to thank the people at the World Puja Network for hosting us here every couple of weeks to bring you up to date on what we're doing at disclosureproject.org and CSETI.org, and also what we're doing with our film that is coming out, we hope, late winter or early spring. And it's at serious.neverendinglight.com if you want to learn more about this historic feature film that you, the people, have funded and that we're working on furiously as we close out the 2012 and enter 2013. And I'm excited to have a dear friend and a wonderful researcher who's been involved in studying UFOs for over 30 years with us today, and this is Paola Harris. And Paola, as many of you may recall, lived for years in Rome and has developed just amazing contacts throughout the European Union and really throughout the world on the subject, and has been doing excellent groundbreaking research and doing interviews with figures ranging from Colonel Philip Corso, who of course wrote the book The Day After Roswell, the day after, and then also with Paul Hellyer, the former Minister of Defense that I did the press conference with some years ago up in Canada, and many other figures, and she has really helped a lot with Disclosure Project, and actually set up our interview with a senior theologian at the Vatican, Monsignor Balducci, who gave us some wonderful interview prior to his passing, and that was also set up by Paola Harris, and so she's just been a fantastic resource for the whole world on this subject. So welcome, Paola.
Thank you. Happy New Year there, Steve.
Happy New Year, indeed. And to everyone, here we are in 2013. And yes, we survived 2012. There was no doubt. Of course, people, I say that tongue-in-cheek because we all knew that it's the closing of one era and the opening of another. And the era that's trying to emerge over the last 100 years or so is an era of disclosure and revealing the truth and beginning a new civilization that will be a universal, peaceful civilization. And that's what we're really at the core working for. And I'm very interested in what you shared with me privately that you can now share with all the listeners that here on the World Puja Network worldwide about what you have been doing in Europe recently and discovering. I think it's really amazing work you've been doing.
Well, I just came back from Europe. I went over for a conference on November 11th and came back on November 28th. And in the meantime, I had gone to the island of Sardinia, and what I was sharing with you was the sightings on the island of Sardinia and the hidden archaeology around the giants. What was shown to me were artifacts, bones, teeth of people that were 15 feet high, totally hidden archaeology, because the people that have seen this, because their farms or their land to have these tombs in it, have been told to keep quiet. So eventually all this will come out, Dr. Greer, because, I mean, the history of the planet needs to be rewritten correctly. And there's a lot of really courageous people on the island of Sardinia that want to do that. Plus, I shared with you some photos of a gentleman who saw a sighting over his property, and the photos are of 6 beings that were floating above the grass on his property, the 6 beings being the whatever was in the craft. And so I've got some information from Sardinia, which I will elaborate on if you want me to, but I think what you're pointing at was that out of the blue, I got a visit from Mario Borghesio in Turin, and while I was doing that conference, and he came with 2 bodyguards in a limousine, and he came to the hotel, and I don't know, I did not contact him. He somehow found out I was there, and he sat down and he said, "You need to help me," he said, "because I have tried to bring this question open in front of the economic community, and everyone thinks I'm crazy, and so he says, I need the real military witnesses, the real people, and I will, with your help, try to do something in 2013. Well, I gave him some materials, and also because of the help of the Russian gentleman that came out and talked about ETs being among us, Mario Borghesio called me on all my telephones, my landline, my cell phone, and so forth, and said because of the Russian testimony, he says even my detractors, the people on the left, because he's kind of right-wing, he says, are willing to help me now, he said. So he said, I have a lot of support because Russia is coming forth. So slowly, I think if we can't get it done here, we can get it done in Europe.
Well, what was that? Why don't you tell a little bit about who this person is, this Mario, and what?
Mario Borghesio, about 3 years ago, he's a parliamentarian from Italy. You know, they have representatives from all the economic community, and they're called parliamentarians.
EU. I'll just to be clear, because the listeners don't know. You're talking past a lot of detail. What I'm trying to get to, he represents people in Italy in the European Union Parliament. Right. Okay.
Right.
Right.
And he has a very strong interest in UFO disclosure, a dialogue. He said it was a dialogue.
Right.
And he said that a lot of people have interest, but when he began to be the only one, that he got a lot of flack. In other words, a lot of criticism in the press.
Well, no, this is what he needs is he needs to be armed with the 600-page disclosure book that has all the government documents that are the best throughout the world, as well as over almost 70 top-secret military witnesses' testimony transcript, which anyone can get at disclosureproject.org. It's also in a nearly 600-page briefing document that's embedded digitally in the 2-hour DVD that's also available at disclosureproject.org, and the executive summary that was given to the president is also in that DVD, and although it's not in print per se because it's just a small executive summary. And the other thing is the Obama briefing, which we're about ready to digitize. After this film Sirius comes out, I'm going to release the entirety in digital form of not just my letter for Obama, but the entire brief that was provided to him via John Podesta, who is, of course, the man who set up the Obama administration, so that people realize what is in the possession of the President of the United States for the last 3.5 years. And I think what he needs to be armed with as he goes to the European Parliament, and I'm certainly willing to help with this, is this kind of dispositive proof, evidence, testimony, documents, materials, etc. And that's really what he needs to have. And so, as I mentioned to you, I certainly would assist him in any way I can.
Yeah, I'd asked you that, Dr. Greer, because I think you have what they need. I mean, it's objective and very good testimony. They're witnesses that really they're telling the truth. They were involved. It's firsthand sources and all of this. So I absolutely. What we'll do is provide him with all of that. And he was asking me what we're doing here in the States. He was asking me what's happening here.
Right.
And of course, you can tell the listeners too of what we're trying to do here.
Right. Well, I think what we're finding is that the other countries around the world, ranging from Mexico and Denmark and Chile and Brazil, Uruguay, even France to an extent, and the UK, many have opened up many more files, whereas in the United States, of course, it's always been dead silence from the government, because people don't understand that because the United States military-industrial complex is the crown jewel on this issue in the world, it's also where there's the least openness and transparency, which has, of course, been very frustrating to the president and many other people. And what we have found is that it's counterintuitive that these smaller countries that have much smaller defense budgets and much smaller defense establishments are more able, such as Denmark or Uruguay or Brazil, to open up on this matter than in the United States, where there's no intact chain of command. And I remember some years ago there was, and you know about this gentleman, Paola, named astronaut Gordon Cooper, who has since unfortunately passed away. But astronaut Gordon Cooper was one of the early Mercury astronauts, and he had handled the film footage of one of these UFOs landing in broad daylight in 1956 on a dry lake bed in near what's now Edwards Air Force Base. And that was the process. He saw the footage. He was ordered to put it on a general's plane and fly it back to the Pentagon, which he did because he was a colonel at the time. And we have his testimony, by the way, Gordon Cooper's testimony. Now, when I did a presentation to a group in Washington some years ago, to the Federalist Society, which is a sort of a old and in a sense very conservative group of folks, but they were very interested in the subject. They had invited astronaut Gordon Cooper and myself to present at their gathering in Washington, and Gordon and I had a discussion, and this was during a period after the Clinton administration had left and the Bush administration was there in the 2000s, and he said to me, and I don't know if you know this story, Paula, but it's probably the first time I've ever shared it publicly, because it illustrates the point I'm going to get to in a moment. The astronaut told me, Gordon Cooper told me, that the Secretary of Defense for Bill Clinton, and of course, I had provided a briefing to the Clinton administration and to CIA Director Woolsey on all of this, as well as a number of other senior people. But the Secretary of Defense had asked Gordon Cooper personally to give him information about this landing case so that he, the Secretary of Defense, Cohen, could track it down and find the evidence and find this footage. So Gordon Cooper gave him all the full particulars, when, where, how, all the stuff. And the Secretary of Defense for the United States of America came back to Gordon Cooper and said, I can't find anything. It went into some black hole, and they were just all telling me that no one knows where it is, and it's disappeared into some other black project. And so even the Secretary of Defense, with actionable intelligence, which is the buzzword in the intelligence and military sphere, could not obtain so much as the footage that was processed by an astronaut who personally handled it and vouched for it and gave all the full particulars to this Secretary of Defense. This is how dysfunctional and unconstitutional this situation is in the United States of America. Now, that's just one of 100 examples like that I could give. And that was a very, very difficult thing for people in Europe to understand. As you know, a couple of years ago, we received a French delegation of intelligence and Air Force people in Washington, who I hosted first at our place, my home in Washington. Then we brought them out to our farm here in Virginia. And we had a little retreat because they were very interested in learning about all of this from the American side. And, of course, until recently, President Sarkozy, who was the president of France, was very actually interested in all of this. And an admiral who did all the briefings for him on these sort of issues had reached out to us. And so what we did was put together a team. Our commander, Will Miller, who has set up my meetings for the Defense Intelligence Agency director, the 3-star General Patrick Hughes, and the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and others. And we had these people here at my home, and when we started explaining how the U.S. chain of command doesn't work on this subject, that it's been decapitated and has been decapitated since October of 1954, so that the President and the Secretary of Defense and senior members of Congress and even very senior generals that we have briefed are completely beguiled and befuddled because they cannot penetrate the secrecy, even when they have actionable intelligence. For example, when I gave Admiral Tom Wilson a document that I've also provided to President Obama that actually has the project code names and code numbers, not from the 40s or 50s, but from the 1990s. Even with that information, he was able to identify one secret project, Paula, but he was not able to get information from that project because when he contacted them, now imagine this is an admiral who is in charge of intelligence briefings for the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the world's largest military. So before I went to that meeting with him, with Edgar Mitchell, who I invited as a guest, and some other people, I gave him this document. Well, this admiral got hold of this particular cell, which is a black operation, and he said, I'm Admiral Wilson of the Joint Staff Intelligence. I'm in charge of intelligence for the Joint Staff, and I'd like to be read into, which is military speak for briefed. I want to be read into this project. And they said to him, well, sir, we know who you are, but you don't have a need to know. And he said, well, damn it, how can I not have a need to know? I'm the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And they said, sir, we will not discuss this with you. Click, hung up on him, and then blocked his line. Now, this I know for a personal fact. This is not a conspiracy theory. So this is something that in Europe, when the French delegation that we received heard these stories, and not only heard them from me, but heard them confirmed by Commander Miller and our military advisors and our science advisors and people with PhDs and long histories in Washington, they went, this is horrible and fascinating, but how can this be? I said, you're not listening to me. There's been a coup d'etat for 50 years and running in the United States on this issue. And that's why people don't seem to get it, that there is sort of a parallel secret government that runs this stuff, and if they don't like who the CIA director happens to be, they won't tell him anything. Now, there are other CIA directors, such as George Bush Sr., who was fully involved in with it. But like Woolsey, who was Clinton's CIA director, knew nothing. Same thing with Secretary of Defense Cohen. So it really is fascinating, and I think that one of the things I've had to educate the Europeans on, this is where I'm getting to with this, is the way you throw away your civics history books and your civics lessons from high school, because that isn't how these super secret projects run. They run on another level from Mount Olympus. They're sort of, they're the masters of the universe that run in a different way. And it doesn't matter if you're the President of the United States or the Secretary of Defense or the CIA director or what your rank or privilege is, even in Washington and even in the Pentagon, if they don't want you to know. And this is also what I got confirmed from. Do you remember this old gentleman in England, Paula, named Lord Hill Norton?
Absolutely, yes.
Did you ever get to know him?
No, I didn't, but I did see the clip on Out of the Blue. James Fox did an interview with him, and I did watch that.
Well, I mean, I spent a lot of time with him, and of course he invited me to his home there. He had a beautiful country home in Hampshire, which is an area out a couple hours from London. And back some years ago, he invited me there. And, of course, he had been, if those of you who don't know who Lord Hill Norton was, he was a 5-star admiral, which they don't have anymore. They used to call them Sea Lords. And he was also the head of the Ministry of Defense for some years and head of the military committee for NATO. And the entire time that he was in those positions, he was never given any information on this subject. The fact that he confirmed to me as I met with him. Now, what was interesting, the reason he wanted to meet with me, he wanted to get from me the briefing I'd put together for the president, which, of course, I gave him. I'm not running anything secret here. I said, if you want it, here it is. If you're able to read, it's dispositive, and that's that. Of course, no one reads anymore, especially a 600-page thing. But he did. And I'm sitting with him in his parlor, and he's looking at me, and he finally looks up, and he's this little guy with piercing blue eyes, and he looks at me, and he says, what I want to know is why wouldn't they tell me about this when I was the head of the Ministry of Defense? And I said, well, let me answer your question with a question. And he looked rather peeved, but I wasn't trying to be cheeky. I just said, just hear me out, Admiral. And I said, what would you have done if you had found out that there was a cabal, a clique of people who knew about this, had figured out how UFOs operate, could have gotten us out of Mideast oil and into a free energy economy with no pollution and no poverty half a century ago, and that they were ruthlessly keeping it secret and lying to people in the constitutional chain of command and had engaged even up to and including murder to keep this. And he says, I wouldn't have stood for it for one bloody moment. And he was almost jumping up out of his chair. And I said, that's why they didn't tell you anything. And his eyes widened. I said, they don't want you to know this because they knew you're a good guy. You're a stand-up guy, Admiral. So Admiral Lord Hill Norton and I had this great conversation about this. I said, they'd first do a soul biopsy. They do an analysis to see if you're a good person who would like to benefit humanity. If you are, they're not going to tell you anything. If you're one of these devils who are interested in centralized power and maintaining the current hegemony in the world with the petrodollar and the fossil fuel system, then they'll bring you up through the system. It has nothing to do with your rank. And this is what the French people, when I was talking to them about what had happened in the United States and also in the United Kingdom, they were a little bit befuddled, and then they got it. And I have found that in smaller countries like in Denmark and other countries around the world, I said, well, one of the things you have to remember is that the United States of America has, if you add up our defense budget, Homeland Security, CIA, the other intelligence operations, National Security Agency, we're pushing $1 trillion a year. So between 100 and 200 billion of that $1 trillion a year is stolen, missing. It goes into black budget. No one has any idea. That's why we're in Rumsfeld right before 9/11 said there's $2.3 trillion missing out of the Department of Defense budget. And by the way, that clip is going to be in the movie Sirius. It's going to be amazing. We found the clip. It's going to be in there. And people go, did he mean trillion or billion? I said, no, he meant trillion. It's missing, unaccounted for. That's what we're talking about. And so now if you look at that number, Paula, if you were to look at the biggest defense budgets of any country in the world besides the United States, the amount that we have stolen or is lost into these black projects is larger than any other defense budget in the world. Just the amount we lose. Not the amount we spend total, the amount we lose that we can't keep track of. So this is what these people I need to sit down with some of these folks and explain how the world really works when you're talking about this kind of power and money and defense spending and intelligence operations, because there's no frame of reference in Europe or in Italy for this. I mean, they just can't quite wrap their mind around it. It took about a week for the French to wrap their mind around this. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from. Explaining this to you, see it so clearly. Everyone asks, and everyone has asked me in Europe, why is the secret secret? Right. And when I tell them it has nothing to do with aliens, it has nothing to do with sightings, it has nothing to do, it has to do with economics, and it has to do with the energy system. You know, what's being hidden is not the idea that we are not alone. I think that that's plausible. I mean, if you do the archaeology, it's plausible. It's all the rest.
Right. Yeah, but one thing backs into the other. In other words, I was talking to someone once about this. They said, yeah, but if you acknowledge that we've been visited, then people will say, well, is it likely we are being visited now and that these UFOs are real? The answer is going to be yes. And then people are going to say, well, gee, I wonder how they're moving from one star system to another. They're certainly not using Exxon Jet A fuel, and they're certainly not using rockets circa 1942 from Werner von Braun. They're using a whole trans-dimensional physics system, which have been studied and asked and answered. I mean, that question has been asked, and it was answered in the 40s and 50s. And the problem becomes, if you acknowledge the reality of the subject at all, then you're stepping into this area of what the title of my autobiography is Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge, because this is the hidden truth and the forbidden knowledge that is absolutely you're not supposed to talk about. And the best way they can do it is to just ridicule it, so that friends like your friend Mario just encounters all this ridicule. But that was also done deliberately by the CIA. They launched a program in 1953. I have a document that describes their engaging Disney Studios to do cartoons and make levity of the whole flying saucer little green man thing, so that it would become a subject of ridicule and no one of stature would take it seriously. And that actually was a very effective intelligence operation, and it is running to this day, as you can tell from the rubbish that comes out of Hollywood.
Yeah, I think we owe it to people like Gordon Cooper, don't you, though, Steve, to go ahead and keep at it. People say, why do you keep at it? Why are you still doing this? Why? It's because we owe it to people like Gordon Cooper, who was also involved in the 1979 attempt with the United Nations with Grenada.
Right.
Gordon Cooper was there with Alan Hynek and Jacques Vallée and Leo Stringfield, who was an amazing researcher.
Right.
These people, Lee Spiegel was responsible for that, and there was an attempt to go through the United Nations. I mean, maybe if United Nations can't do it, maybe the EU can do it. A group of international people that will have a dialogue, because what Mr. Borghesio told me was, he said, we need to begin a dialogue, and that's what really impressed me.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, has happened intermittently, and that's why I keep saying that these big governmental institutions need to have people who are in them, like your friend, to lead the charge. But they're also going to, at a certain point, run into a buzzsaw, as there's a book that Gore Vidal wrote the foreword for called Into the Buzzsaw, and it's about how people who stumble across certain really hot topics end up getting cut down. And I remember, I don't know if you remember, back in the 90s, there was a UN Secretary General named Boutros Ghali, and he and his wife were very interested in what we were doing and invited me up to New York, and I did a briefing at the UN for a group there, and Mrs. Boutros Ghali greeted me at the Great Hall of the UN, and took me by my arm, and I had my second daughter with me, and we're walking through the Great Hall. And she turns to me and hisses, and was not the first time I had met her, but she says, when are you going to get this done? Now, I'm just a country doctor in North Carolina, rambling around in an ER and taking care of shootings and stabbings and car wrecks and burned victims and God knows what all. And she looks at me and says this. I said, what are you talking about? She says, this has to happen, this disclosure. I said, well, Leah, your husband is the head of the world. He's the head of the United Nations. He says, no, they'll kill Boutros. And I said, excuse me? And, of course, my daughter's right there and old enough to understand what she's saying. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I, chopped liver? And, of course, I am. Yeah, but, I'm going, oh, my God, you've got to be kidding me with this. So we have this meeting, but what we found was that eventually he got moved aside, and then Kofi Annan came in. Well, Kofi Annan agreed to hold the disclosure event we did at the National Press Club at the UN, in the general, where the Secretary General and the whole General Assembly meets. He got a visit. And some suits with an all-access pass came in and threatened him, and basically indicated that the money would be pulled and the UN would be bankrupt if he did such a thing. And so that UN initiative was shut down. And so that's when I had to do it at the National Press Club. Now, I've never told this story before, but that's how we ended up going from the UN to the National Press Club.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Oh, terrible. Terrible.
Well, it's also very powerful what you just said, because you've gone to the highest of the high to open these doors. And what I'm seeing now is that you're going to the people, and the people have the power. It's the people that really will open the doors.
You're right, and this is why we view this film. It's interesting, Sirius, this film that we wanted it finished in December, but we're delayed a couple months because, as you know, the director's father was shot in the back at that Sikh temple shooting, and also we're trying to get some more work done on this little ET bean and get some genetic work done, but that's also gotten delayed because it's such a specialized endeavor. There's some specialized equipment having to be ordered and custom made and et cetera and so on. So, but we still hope to have this done somewhere, February, March time period. But what we're finding is that this has been funded by the people, and when it comes out, eventually we're going to want to see the people being the, as I said, you may have been there in March when I was at the UFO conference in Phoenix just in last March in 2012, and I said, look, we want to do this, and everyone in this room and everyone listening right now on the World Fusion Network needs to be a networker and maybe eventually a distributor for this film, because it's got to go viral. It's got to go grassroots. It's got to go out there in a way where now, granted, this is just a 2-hour introductory special, and it's geared for people who don't know anything about the subject. So it's not for the UFO crowd at all, but it's to introduce all these aspects, the secrecy, the energy, the evidence, and also the future of contact, the future of a world with free energy, going into space together peacefully instead of with weapons blazing. That's what we're trying to cover. Now, you're doing that in 2 hours, which is a big a tall order. But what we want to do in the aftermath of it, if the public helps us with, as they have with the funding, if they help us with the rolling out of it, what we want to do and what I'm planning to do in 2013 is to have, half a dozen additional half-hour to 1-hour shows that will drill down more and more deeply into all these issues that will come out on a regular basis, so that this 2-hour special just becomes like a doorway into the whole subject. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we're developing a whole multimedia approach and a new website for that we hope to launch in the next couple of months. So that will be a doorway to this, because really when push comes to shove, it really is going to be the people. And it's the people not only finding out about this, but I liked what you said about 25 minutes ago. You mentioned this Sardinia, and I've heard of this, by the way, and that the people there, the local people, have a great deal of courage. Well, see, the people, if the people find their voice and their courage, there's no power on earth that can stop it. And so that's what we have to do.
Well, the irony in Sardinia is I went on a skywatch with this gentleman who unearthed a lot of these skeletons, and he told me that at night, and you can identify with this, the tubes come down from the heavens, and he can see the people that they've returned, on a dimensional level. Yep. There is visitations there, and he said, and he's photographed some of this, and he says, I can't get people to believe me unless they're sitting here like you are. And it was very much like the CE5 protocols he was doing here on his land in Sardinia, near Cagliari, near the capital. And I had been with you out in Crestone, so I had the wonderful experience everybody should have of being out in the night sky and experiencing this. And here I was in Sardinia, and here people all over the world are having this kind of interesting contact. And I think that, not only is it an earthly initiative, but I think you've got help from people in higher places.
Well, we do, and see, this is what's happened with the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind initiative, or CE5 initiative, is, 20 years ago when I first came up with the idea, it was just myself and a couple people I found in Asheville, North Carolina, to do it. Now we have this global CE5 initiative, which you can find out about at cseti.org, and there is literally thousands of people around the world and hundreds of teams in every country doing this. And there's an app for your iPhone, and now also just a month or two ago we came out with an app for Androids, where you can download the remote viewing protocol, the meditation, the crop circle tones that we send out into space, and the whole concept behind making making contact in your own local area and becoming a diplomat to these people. And there are now thousands of people who are doing that, which is creating its own zeitgeist. It's creating its own sort of morphogenic field of change, as Rupert Sheldrake would say, and in consciousness, but also in what people are doing. And it's really exciting because one of the members of our team will hold an event once a month or so where people coordinate on a 24-hour basis on time zones around the world where they're all doing it at the same time. So there's a continuous level of contact based in consciousness and peace. And when I saw those photographs you sent me from Sardinia, I thought immediately of the kinds of beings and photographs we've taken recently at our expeditions. 3 years ago when we were at Joshua Tree, there was this ambassador from the Andromeda galaxy that appeared, and actually the photograph of that being, whose name is Bijou, is at cseti.org, cseti.org, and it's a trans-dimensional electronic energy. It's like a light beam, but it is ET. Now, they could fully materialize in the flesh, but it'd be more dangerous for them because of the military tracking of them. But when they appear this way, they're quite visible, often with the naked eye, and certainly with these new digital cameras. So we're starting to get some amazing photographs like what you sent me. And it's interesting, too, that you mentioned that these skeletal remains are that tall, because we have a photograph from Mount Shasta from August when we were there with the team. And a member of our team, Deb Warren, took this photograph, and there's this luminous, glowing, reddish being that's about 15 feet tall. I'm not kidding. That's right there between us and this massive log lodge where we were doing this on 110 acres. And it's so cool. It's amazing. And when you told me that these beings that they had found were that large, I went, yes, we've actually had contact with these kinds of beings in this transdimensional energy field. And I think this kind of evidence is so important, and it's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum of this little ET body that we're investigating to put into this film Sirius. That's only, well, he's only 6 inches, or I say he. I don't know if it's a he or she. We really don't know the gender, but it's like a little mummy. But it's about 6 inches long, and we understand that the adults, because this was maybe a 1 or 2 year old baby, that the adults are only about 18 inches to 2 feet. So, the ET diversity is so amazing because it goes from these little tiny beings, the wee ones, as they would call in sort of Celtic literature, to these giants that have been seen in Ecuador and in Sardinia. These have been reported in more places than just Sardinia, Paula.
Yeah, there was an article while I was in Sardinia. They had found some in Greece under the Parthenon that were 15 feet tall. And I was looking at that article, and I thought, well, this is coming into my consciousness right now, so maybe I should look at this, because this is hidden archaeology that shows that whatever was here, whoever was here way before us and was visiting the planet then, and there's actual artifacts of these. I mean, I saw a tooth from one of these. I actually photographed it, one of these 15-foot tall people, and I could not believe it was a human tooth. It was huge. It was so interesting to me. And the man has written a book. It's all in Italian, of course, and has photographs in it. And what he asked me, he said, "Look, I'd like to share this with the world, but I live in such a small place," and he said, "I don't speak English. Could you do something?" And what I am trying to do is just disclose this so other people can take this on, because what I usually do, witness testimony, and so people that are interested in looking at these kinds of things should mobilize and start looking at the fact that all UFO research is not American.
Absolutely. In fact, some of the best material and evidence is not in the United States and is in these other countries. And that's something that, if there was ever a properly funded research initiative, I mean, as you know, you and I and others have done this just out of our back pocket and the sweat of our brow, but there's not as if there's a National Science Foundation grant for $50 million to research this stuff properly. We're just doing this. I mean, even the geneticist who's doing the work for us is doing this out of his own pocket and in his own time, because he's a tenured professor at an Ivy League school and has the ability to do it. But otherwise, realize the genetic work that he's doing would be well over 100. It'd be more than the budget almost in the entire film. And so people need to understand that's the other reason why the public needs to get behind this, so that there's the support in place, because there's more material and research out there than has been organized and properly presented. And by properly presented, I mean not in a tabloid UFO conference or a tabloid journal or the National Enquirer, but I mean done well and seriously. And that's what we really need to move towards, but of course to do that is costly and time consuming, and you have to have people who can be doing the research and putting it out there and creating multimedia information that the public can, appreciate. And one of the things I've found is that while I'm happy to do these larger, more in-depth briefings for policy wonks, and, some of them will read a 600-page briefing document and certainly an 18-page executive summary. But the average person out there now lives in the Twitterverse of 142 characters. So you have to make it, I'm a bit of an academic, and you have to make it more digestible and presentable to larger and larger audiences, which is what the filmmaker is trying to do with the film Sirius, so that it can reach a lot of people with a dramatic narrative and all that sort of thing. But in terms of the evidence behind it, what we want to do is then pull in more and more of this. And one of the things I was going to ask you, are there people there in Sardinia who have physical evidence besides this one tooth? Are there other? Oh
no, there's bones. And also they just sent me the photographs of the tombs, the actual tombs. The tombs are long.
Do you know if they have any marrow still in the bones?
No, because what it is they're keeping all this hidden. They've been threatened just like everybody else.
See, here's what we need to talk about. This little being, we don't know how old it was, but how long ago he was killed. But it's from the Atacama Desert in Chile, and the driest place on Earth, by the way, driest desert in the world, driest spot in the world. So it was very desiccated and very dry. And but it turned out that even though there wasn't any kind of flesh on the bones, there was some connective tissue. There was some material in the cranium we could get, and in the skull. And then there was also, when we clipped one of the ribs, or two of the ribs, under surgical procedures and sterile procedures, there was still bone marrow that was inside the center of the bone. So, and they have taken things all the way back to the time of the dinosaurs, where they have been able to get genetic materials and run a genetic study. So I think that if they have this kind of material, there could be a great deal of scientific discovery with these giants.
Absolutely.
I'm just putting that out there as a.
No, I agree, but it would take a team, as you said. It would take funding, and I have all the contacts of these people.
Okay, good.
So, and they
well, there's a follow-on investigation for the next film. So that's although I'm ready to hurl myself over a cliff just to get this one finished. But I think that what we're going to want to do is make an investigation where there's more and more of this. Because what I'm going to see, I'm predicting this, it's already started to happen. As we come out with this next level of disclosure and public initiative, there's going to be more and more of this kind of amazing evidence coming out. And it exists. I mean, I know for a fact that there are, you mentioned archaeology, but there have been other things. One of the scientists that we've worked with a great deal, who works under contract through a corporation for the CIA, is from time to time given an old artifact that's a technological device that's hundreds of thousands or millions of years old that's been found. And the agency will acquire this. When they hear someone find something like this, they basically go in and just take it. Doesn't matter where it is. It can be in the Amazon. They just, they come in and just, jackbooted thugs take it. But this is the guy who studies it and to see what might it be used for, how did it operate. And he has told me that there have been many of these that have been found and discovered. And yet there could be something like this in private hands. just like this little being that we found that had been in the Atacama Desert was in private hands. It hadn't been snarfed up by the intelligence community. So, because they're not omnipotent and they're not omnipresent, they're fierce, but they're not. So, I think more and more there's a chance that there could be this kind of material and evidence and ancient archaeology and what have you that can start coming forward that would be pretty dispositive. And so I think it's great that you were able to go to Sardinia and see this material.
Well, they were very happy to have somebody pay attention. I think I agree with you. I think there are pockets all over the world of discoveries, but people need to pay attention.
Right.
And people need to pay attention on a global level, because I think that's the only way you could connect the dots to this whole thing. And I was going to ask you, what vision do you have for 2013? Because, I admire your vision. What do you think will be happening? How do you think this will all proceed with the film, with people, with a kind of an awakening and awareness?
Well, it's just been amazing, because I think what's going to happen is that people who can stay on the back of this tiger are going to make it through to a whole new level, and those who can't are going to fall off. And this is the dragon or the tiger of a new era emerging out of the old. And so those who are wedded to the old ways and the old consciousness will probably be consumed by it. And those who attach to the new vision and are propelled forward into the future by it will be part of that. So there are two processes going on simultaneously. There's the collapse of the old order, which is collapsing all around us. So if you're tied in heavily to that, you're going to have to learn detachment. However, if you're attached to a new vision and this whole new era of universal consciousness, universal peace, free energy technology, then that's the wave to be ridden. And some people will be able to stay on the crest of that wave and some won't. But I don't know if I'm being too blunt, but I tend to be direct, as you know. But that's just the way it is. And that's the way all big changes happen. And I think that if you look over the last 100 years, we've been attempting as a society to emerge, because it's been 100 years that we've had potential for free energy, for anti-gravity. I mean, T. Townsend Brown was first doing his high-voltage anti-gravity lifter stuff in 1927, 28, 29. I mean, that's 80, 90 years ago, Paula. So here we sit, in the dinosaur era of fossil fuels and coal, fracking and all this nonsense, which we don't need. But, of course, it's lucrative, and it's trillions of dollars in assets. And so, this is the big struggle, is what is going to be the vision of the future? Is it Mad Max under the Thunderdome, where everyone's fighting and killing over the last barrel of oil as we melt both polar ice caps and breathe more polluted air and everyone gets cancer and dies? Or is it another vision? So you can be part of the old or you can be part of the new. Now, over the last 100 years, unfortunately, of course, the power centers have held, which are financial, economic, technology. The new are trying to emerge, but they keep getting kind of cut down. And that's why it can't be done by a lone wolf. And, this is why I tell people about the only thing I can do is be the cosmic Johnny Appleseed and spread all this and hope a lot of things sprout and people come up, because we really can't do this with one or two people. It has to become something where it's a global awakening. It's like the Arab Spring, but it's got to be the global spring and a global awakening where everyone awakens to this and gets behind a whole new vision. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this film series. It's something that, eventually we want to have it come out with subtitles and what have you, so in various languages it can be seen and understood. So that, and on the internet, because, 5 or 10 years ago, Paula, we couldn't do this. We couldn't have put out a movie that, unless you make it through some big distributor who has a chokehold on movie theaters or something, no one would see it. Now, there are many hosting sites where you can have what's called video on demand. And for, a couple bucks, you can see it. You don't even have to go to a theater. You can see it on your big screen computer TV, or you can see it on your smartphone, or you can see it in India or China or anywhere. You see what I'm saying? So there's a possibility for the new media is enabling a level of disclosure, if you will, that if we utilize it properly, that wasn't possible 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. And that, to me, is very exciting because, the days where you had to go through a big publisher that had a distribution agreement with Barnes & Noble and a brick-and-mortar store, that's gone with the wind. Same thing with movies in Hollywood. So the independent, I'm going to be at Sundance, by the way, those of you listening who want to join me, on the 23rd of January, I'm going to be hosting a reception and showing a trailer for the film Sirius in Sundance at Cicero's on Main Street. And it's exciting because the Foo Fighters and Dave Grohl will be there also at Sundance this year. And, of course, as you all know, the Foo Fighters are a big rock band, but the word Foo Fighter is what was used for UFOs in World War II, and Dave Grohl is very interested in the UFO subject. And he's also doing the keynote address at South by Southwest in Austin, which is a film festival and technology festival, which we also hope to be at with the film Sirius in March. So, but if you want to join us at Sundance, those of you who will be there or in the area in Salt Lake, we're going to be there you can sign up for the details for that at disclosureproject.org and see what we're doing. But it's a reception, and we'll be doing a trailer, and we'll have the Hollywood press there, and our publicist is working on getting a lot of the media there between 5 and 7 at Cicero's on Main Street in Park City, Utah on January 23rd. So that should be really exciting. And so we're trying to begin to create an awareness about the film even now. Now, of course, we don't have, what's called prints and advertising for films. If you come out with a big feature film in Hollywood that costs $100 million, they usually spend another $100 million in advertising. We don't have that. So it's mostly going to be word of mouth and a very modest effort. But we're going to do what we can, and I think a lot of it is going to be by people spreading the word virally through Twitter and Facebook and their email address books, and just getting the word out. So
I think it already has the people, and even some people in Europe that follow you already have asked me about the film and so forth. And I think that there's something called the ripple effect, and that'll just naturally happen with this film.
Oh, it will. And, already, we have people like there's a very renowned New York best-selling author that has included the Disclosure Project in some of his novels, named Stephen Alton, and he reached out to us a week or two ago, right before Christmas. And Michael Short, who does a lot with the Communities of Peace at the United Nations, is hosting things now on his networks about it. It just continues to grow and grow and grow. And it's really very exciting. So I see 2013 being a big year of increasing awareness on the subject, and we have formed a research group so that people, as they find out about this, if they want to support the creation of a free energy lab, we're going to be able to do that. It's formed, and we already have some significant commitments that we're hoping will come through in 2013 to do that, because, ultimately what I'd like to see us do, we the people do, is bypass the government and the corporations and form our own not only UFO research effort that's properly supported, but also these new energy environmental technologies where we basically, instead of it being in a secret underground skunk works, is in a laboratory that's being streamed live on the internet, so that there are millions of people seeing the work we're doing. And if any thugs come in to try to shut down our research, the whole world's watching. And I think that people have to understand that that's something that couldn't have been done 10 years ago that can be done now. And so there are a lot of strategies we have for bringing this information and these sciences and technologies out, because the big mistake that most of these researchers have done is they get one thing that comes at them that scares them, and then they do everything secretively. Well, that's what these game players want you to do. Whereas my response is to, frankly, have a big mouth and tell everyone if someone makes a threat towards me or my group, or if you do something in plain sight, which is what we've done in the last 10 years, where you have millions of people, hundreds of millions of people who saw the Disclosure Project event and launched this whole global disclosure effort worldwide, it's very hard for them to come in and make a move against you when there are millions of people watching. Well, now we need to do that with more of this research and science and technology, and that's what we plan to do in 2013.
Well, it sounds exciting, and I'm so glad to be part of it. Dr. Greer, thank you.
Well, I'm glad you are. You've done so much wonderful work in your career of this, and also in helping us with gathering material and evidence. And to everyone, by the way, who has been providing evidence and materials for this film, keep in mind we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of stuff, and there's a 2-hour film we're doing. So literally only a tiny fraction of what we have can be used. But the whole idea behind Sirius is that it's almost like a pilot introduction for things that we want to create that will be coming in down the road, that will go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into this, and will continue to sort of have this, what you call ripple effect, Paula, and we'll get out there and including the concept of peaceful contact, like you did with your friend in the Sardinia. By the way, those of you who want to come, there's a beautiful island in the Gulf of Mexico. If you get tired of the cold and the dreary, which I already am here in Virginia, we're going to be on this island, Marco Island, in southwest Florida in the Gulf of Mexico in February, the 2nd through the 9th, I believe it is. And we're going to be doing this contact protocol with, 15 or 20 people. It's a small group. Under the stars, and we have a private state beach that we have reserved for our use at night, and we have had just amazing contact there in the last couple of years. So it's a training. We'll be training people in meditation, remote viewing, and the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind initiative, and those of you who want to join us, there's still a few places open. So you can find out about that at cseti.org or etcontactnow.com, and we will, just let us know if you want to try to make it to that. It's going to be in February, and it's about the warmest and nicest place in the United States that time of year, so it should be great.
Well, I'd like to join you again in Crestone. I was really mind blown, if I can use that term, especially with all the things that happened in Crestone. So this year in June, I'm not making any plans because I'd love to be with you again there.
Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah, we're planning to do that in June of 2013. And, I have a little bit of land there. Of course, Paula, you've been there.
Yeah.
And it's in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains and the San Juan Valley. And there's so many. The first night the filmmaker was out over us, a disc flew right over that then tried to be intercepted by a jet, and then it dematerialized right above us. It was amazing.
Yeah, I was witness to that, and it actually changes a person to be in that kind of atmosphere. I mean, I came home and my biorhythms were different. I thought it was amazing, and I thank you for that effort.
Well, you're welcome. I'm so glad you could be there. You were a really great addition to the team. And, because we spend, the day and night. It's a pretty intensive program, but it's very deep into consciousness and meditation and teaching people that all these interstellar civilizations are going through frequencies and other dimensions faster than the speed of light, which means that thought is one of those frequencies. And once you understand that, and that the key is the science of consciousness, and on the World Puja Network I can really talk about this, that's really where the magic happens. And once you understand that, making contact becomes really simple.
Yeah, well, I wish you a very happy 2013, because I think it's going to be exciting. We're all in this together, and I think that all your work is really appreciated, especially all over the world. I thank you very much.
Well, thank you for sharing your experiences in Europe, and anything we can do to help with the initiative at the European Parliament or anything else, let me know. And I'm happy to actually send a care package to your friend who's in the Parliament there of all this evidence we have, if he'd like that, and just be in touch with me, and we can make that happen. Yeah,
that's one of my plans. That's definitely something we're going to do.
Great. Well, again, I'd like to thank the folks at the World Puja Network for hosting us. The hour went by quickly, and thank you, Paula, for your help. Paula Harris has been with us for this hour at the World Puja Network. And until next time, keep looking up, and God bless.